All right, good evening, everyone. This is the WestCat meeting of February 13th at 6:30, so we'll get started. So we call the meeting to order and have roll call.
Norma Martinez-Rubin.
Here.
Heidi Swillinger. Cameron Sasai is absent excused. Jerry Parsons.
Present.
Tom Hanson.
Here. Yeah. Shall now we rise and pledge allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So it brings us to the approval of the agenda.
Second.
Got a motion and a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Let's go to the public communications. Do we have any public communications? All right, perfect. Shall we go to the consent calendar? Does everybody have any questions on consent calendar, or are we ready to approve it as is?
I move to approve consent calendar.
I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you very much. Shall then we move to the closed session? So we'll take a little break here and move to a closed session, and we'll be back and report out as soon as we're done. So thank you. All right, good evening, everyone. We're back from closed session. It is 10 after 7. And a report out of closed session is that we've asked our general manager if he'd like to stick around for another year or two, and he said yes. So we'll be retaining Rob, and going to meet again next. And we'll be meeting again next month to discuss the contract. We're kind of light tonight, so we think it would be good to make sure someone from Hercules is here when we settle the contract. So we'll be doing this again next month. All right. So let's see, 5.0? Yep. Consideration of amendment to the employment, no, that's not, 6.0. 6.1, consideration of approval of WICTAC's Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program. Mr. General Manager.
I'm actually going to ask Tanya to take this and the next item.
Hello. So WestCat's required to have a disadvantaged business enterprise program because we receive federal funding, and the DBE program only applies to federally assisted contracts. On April 9th last year, the U.S. Department of Transportation amended the DBE regulation. So we had a new DBE final rule. We're required to be compliant with that final rule and provide our updated compliant DBE program to FTA by March 1st. So we have a short deadline for that. So the DBE program in your board packet is compliant with the DBE final rule. And the main changes to the program that we had to add some new forms. The new program focuses on monitoring for prompt payment and return of retainage for the prime contractor and any subcontractors. And also there's some new reported information that's required from all of our bidders on federally assisted contracts. So those are the main changes to the DBE regulation that affected us. I do want to direct your attention to the DBE program policy statement. That's on page 4 of the program because we are required to share that with the board of directors and all departments at our agency. So what that details is our commitment to the DBE program and all of the objectives of the DBE program. We're recommending that you approve WestCat's Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program that was updated in compliance with the April 9th, 2024 DBE final rule, and authorize staff to submit the program to the FTA. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So now we need to make a motion to approve.
I move to approve the adoption of Resolution 2025-02 to approve the WICTAC's Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program.
A second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone like to abstain? All right, that brings us to 6.2, consideration of approval of WCCTA's Title VI program.
Again, I'm just
Hello.
going to ask Tanya to take it.
That's me also. I'm not moving. So every 3 years, WestCat has to submit a updated Title VI program to the federal government, to the FTA. And so we updated our program in compliance with the Title VI Civil Rights Act of 1964. And our previous Title VI program was submitted in 2022. The updated Title VI program includes all the required information. And so there's a Title VI notice to the public. It informs individuals of their rights under Title VI. There is the Title VI complaint procedures and form, a list of our Title VI investigations, complaints, and lawsuits from the previous 3 years, public participation plan, the language assistance plan, service standards and policies, and then the Title VI program board resolution. And the program is in your board packet. There were minimal updates to this year's Title VI program submission. The main updates included language assistance plan changes. We are required to review census data for our service area every 3 years at a minimum. And so we did review that data, and we did make a few changes to the language assistance program. We translate all of our vital documents into Spanish, and then we have also information in Tagalog and Chinese also now. Just a statement that if you need additional information in Tagalog or Chinese, you can reach out to us. So that is newly added to our language assistance plan. In addition, we also updated the service standards based on our current fleet and our routes. So we have to submit the Title VI program to the FTA before April 1st of this year. And I'm recommending that you adopt the resolution to approve WestCat's June 1st, 2025 to May 31, 2028 Title VI program, and authorize staff to submit the program to the FTA. And if you have any questions on the Title VI program, I'm happy to answer those.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone like to abstain? All right, thank you.
I did have some questions
Sure.
about, of
Please.
staff about the program. The period of the program is going to be during the time that there is an ongoing study, and you have yet to obtain findings from that study to make improvements. So one of the things that caught my attention in the staff report was a section that has to do with service policies and transit amenities, the transit amenities policy. And I'll tell you specifically what caught my attention, because I think in the past, I know at least from Pinole, there's been one board member who, in his own way, was specifically requesting some amenities, specifically seating areas or shelters at some bus stops. And given the budget, WestCat's budget, there isn't really additional funding for those kinds of amenities at all the bus stops that we have. But there is a statement in the report about this program that speaks to improving stops which serve the largest volume of passengers. So my question is, in the study that's being conducted, will WestCat have information that speaks to that informs us of where those stops are? So that's one question. And related to that, my thought is, and I don't know whether there's any association or correlation with the following, that because there is an absence of amenities, then those bus stops aren't used. So the volume is not there. And that's why I asked the question. So back to the first part. Will the study inform, if we don't already know, WestCat doesn't already know, where the larger volume of passengers congregate, where there could possibly be consideration for an amenity, given the availability of funding for that?
So I think I'll take that one. So I'm not sure the study itself will call that out, but we do have the ability to look at our ridership data by individual stop. So it's certainly something we can look at. I'm not sure it would be part of the study, but it's certainly something we can look at in a separate document. I think, I know it does say in the policy, but I think a lot of it all comes down to we don't own the stop, so we can suggest places where improvements may be, where improvements would be valuable, but we can't always kind of implement the actual project, and we do rely a lot on contractors, developers when they're doing projects, and I think both cities and the county do a good job of making sure we're informed when these projects are going on, so we can work with them to install shelters, to install benches. But to answer your question, yes, it's something we can look at. It's not going to be part of this specific plan, though.
Okay, so if it's something we can look at, then that's great, which if it should happen that there is an opportunity and all things, opportunities are there, then it could be a consideration to add an amenity, add a bench, add a shelter. It's not for a lack of information.
Yeah, it's not for a lack of information. Okay. I think it's fairly obvious that throughout our own whole service area, there's a need for greater transit amenities. It's not a surprise. The difficulty is actually financing them and then the installation of them. We do always have a concern in the back of our mind of the ongoing maintenance that comes along with that, as well as the cost associated with that. So that's something that we always kind of consider when we're making these changes. But we have staff now that do work on shelters, do go out to our stops and clean up trash, things like that. So it's all there. It's in the background. A lot of it just comes down to the funding, really.
Thank you for clarifying that and explaining it so that we're all aware, as well as passengers or riders who might ask again and again. And I suppose if we could document those kinds of requests, that might be helpful as well at some point. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, please.
This. Do you have a sense of what percentage of WestCat's funding is federal in general?
Well, the federal funding we get is just capital related.
Uh-huh.
So it depends on what our capital projects are year on year. So it's a difficult question to answer. I mean, most of our capital projects are vehicle replacements.
Mhm.
For that, we would receive around 80% of the
80%?
cost would be federal. So, but if for general operations, it's virtually zero. Well, it is zero.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
I'd like to add to that a little bit. If there was, especially since your grants, if there was a grant available within, I know Rodeo specifically, maybe Crockett, there could be some grant funding for benches. Never really was discussed around buses, but around some other projects. Is that something that you could partner up with a different organization, such as like the Rotary, the Lions, some other external body?
Yeah, of course. I mean, certainly. I mean, we have an ability through our membership of CALAC. There's a cooperative purchasing agreement to actually purchase shelters and benches, and that's kind of the standard that we do. So, we have an ability to purchase them at a reduced cost. I mean, at a cost where there's a contract out there that we can purchase off. So we're certainly able to partnership. As I say, we often partnership with developers. I mean, that's how a number of shelters, certainly within Penola in the last couple of years, have been installed. Even at the Safeway and Hercules, I mean, that was all through the development project that went on.
Thank you. If somebody could reach out to me tomorrow, that'd be great.
All right. That takes care of 6.2. Shall we do 6.3, discussion on capital funding. Yeah, we did. Yeah. We voted and then we talked about it. We were being super efficient.
We could vote again and we'd vote the same.
Turn it down this time.
Okay, so 6.2. So this is I put this on the agenda just based on kind of some of the concerns with the current administration and the federal funding that's ongoing. There isn't a staff report in your packet because up until 10 o'clock this morning I wasn't completely sure what I was going to talk about. Myself, County Connection, Tri-Delta and LAVDA spent the day in Sacramento yesterday. We met with a number of the legislators up there. We had 7 meetings altogether. We met with the Transportation Commission, both from the Senate and from the Assembly. We met with a number of Assembly members, including our representative, Buffy Wicks, and we also met with Senator Araguin, who also represents this area. We met with his staff, actually. But we had a lot of discussions around funding and around the move to zero-emission vehicles. So I want to kind of touch on a number of things just to start this conversation with the board that I think is going to be something that we're probably going to come back for a further discussion next month and then potentially come back for direction, for action, just to kind of make sure that we're moving ahead in the right direction. So I'm going to touch on the operational funding just briefly because it was something that we talked quite a lot of with the legislators yesterday. Currently, there is a letter and a proposal being put together by a joint letter from Senator Wiener and Senator Araguin to ask for a $2 billion ask for operational funds within the current upcoming state budget. The reality is, we've signed on to a letter of support for that. A number of other operators have. The money would pretty much go to cover the shortfalls of the BART, Muni, Samtrans, VTA, AC Transit, Golden Gate. But we're supporting it as a small agency because if they don't get the funding they need, there's a trickle-down effect that will obviously potentially affect our funding and all of the funding throughout the Bay Area, of all of the sales tax money that we use to provide service. There's a concern that MTC may direct some of that funding to help out the larger operators to our detriment. So that's just an ongoing concern. It's been there, and it's not, hasn't gone away. So we're supportive of this $2 billion ask. The reality is, I think it was pretty clear yesterday. Yes, they're going to put this ask in. It's not going to be, it's not going to happen. It's not it's not something that's going to be supported throughout the whole legislative, by the governor, but the ask will be there. Also talked a lot about the regional measure that we've talked about a number of times, the potential of the Bay Area putting a measure on the ballot for this kind of funding. It'd be a quarter-cent sales tax, a half-cent sales. There's a number of various options out there. MCC have just released today polling that they did around the regional measure. I only saw it at like 5:30 this afternoon, so I don't have a full understanding of all of the breakdown, but the polling wasn't exactly favourable to transit. You know, it didn't look like it was, I think even the most favourable measure barely got 50% of support in the polling. So it's, you know, and based on how, depending on how they bring this forward to the ballot measure, it likely needs 2/3 to pass. So there's a lot of challenges. They're looking at a number of options of a 4-county sales tax that would just be the bar counties, with the ability for San Mateo to join, or any other county to join if they wanted. That's probably the most favourable of the in the voting. The 9-county is it's pretty much a non-starter. I mean, there's just the support's just not there for transit, especially as a lot of it is just it's hard to characterise how it's not just a bailout of current situation. You know, there's no one's going to be adding a lot more service. This is going to be making sure we don't reduce service. So it's a tough sell. So, but that is still all ongoing. I mean, there's a meeting of the MTC ABAG Joint Legislative Committee tomorrow to kind of look at the polling in more detail and to kind of think about what the next steps would be. So I say that because there's obviously a huge concern over operational funding. That's kind of something that's coming up over the next few years. There's not a solution out there right now. There's just we know there's a need. I mean, just to reiterate, you know, BART have got a I think the latest is a $382 million hole in their budget as of next fiscal year. Muni have got something similar. AC Transit have got a huge, VTA have got issues coming up. Golden Gate have got issues. So there's the large operators have got huge holes in their budgets in the next couple of years. So how the region deals with that is a ongoing discussion. But the other topic that we really talked a lot about with the legislators was the innovative clean transit plan, which is the move from transit to zero emission vehicles. And the current mandate is by 2040, all transit vehicles would be zero emission. And as of the next fiscal year, any purchases that we make as a small operator, 25% of our purchases need to be zero emission. I'm going to caveat this a little bit. So one of the reasons I'm bringing this up is the current administration, and I'm going to reference our Lono grant that we got last year for $20 million. That's a discretionary grant that is currently on hold by the administrative. So we have no ability to even access those funds. We have no real knowledge of if those funds will still exist in 6 months' time. And this is not just a WestCat issue. This is County Connection got a $13 million grant. Lafton have got a similar amount. This is across the state. There's a lot of money kind of being held up currently that is pretty much in limbo. We really don't know what's going to happen with that going forward. You know, we don't. And the way the executive order was written, you know, there's a real concern that anything that touches greenhouse emissions, clean air, anything like that is certainly up for grabs as far as Trump's concerned. So it's something that we're really monitoring, and it's something that we're all really aware of. So the other part of that is the MTC did a study recently where the cost to convert to zero-emission vehicles for the Bay Area, this is just the 27 operators in the Bay Area, will be $8 billion, and that's a low estimate. That's in vehicles, infrastructure, that's kind of everything. So I'm coupling that because I've just told you that there's a concern for operational funding, and you know there's a huge need for a major influx of capital funding to get to the clean air initiative that you know the CARB has in place currently. So a lot of the questions that the legislature were asking yesterday were, is this a realistic goal? You know, what are CARB? How are we working with CARB to kind of work on this? You know, what are the options? What can we do going forward? And you know, we do know that you are able to get a waiver from CARB to continue to buy either diesel vehicles or hybrid vehicles. Muni actually just went through the process, this is San Francisco, went through the process of their city approving a resolution to determine that they were not going to buy any more clean vehicles. They were going to buy diesel vehicles because financially that's the only way they can do it. And I want to just spell out what I kind of mean by that. So a regular diesel vehicle, 40-foot vehicle, costs around $700,000. A hybrid costs maybe $1 million, maybe slightly more. A hydrogen or electric vehicle is more like $1.8 million. So there's a lot of funding that is going into this, coupled with currently there are only 2 vehicle manufacturers in the United States that we can buy vehicles from. And one of them is Gillig, who is our local. One of them is New Flyer, who use a lot of their equipment is built partially in Canada and partially in America, and so they have concerns over what tariffs may mean to their business model. I say that because between the 2 of them, I believe annually they make around 2,500-3,000 transit vehicles. That's across the entire nation. There's a reason why when we look to place orders, it used to be it's a 6-month backlog. Then it was a 12-month. Now it's 18 months. So there's the length of time to get these vehicles manufacturers produced is not only costing more, it's also taking a lot longer to do. So there's also the issue of I know our plan is to move towards hydrogen, but hydrogen is still a new technology. Gillig do not even have a prototype hydrogen vehicle. They are working on it, but they do not have one. So they have got a lot of engineering work to do, a lot of testing to do before they have something on the market. New Flyer do have a 35 or 40-foot hydrogen vehicle, but again, coming down to supply limitations and who actually will be able to purchase those vehicles. So hydrogen, and the technology is always changing, always improving. We all know that. I mean, hydrogen has come a long way, but the cost to purchase hydrogen fuel for these vehicles is 3 times the cost of purchasing diesel currently, and that has not come down despite increases in hydrogen usage in the market over the last few years. So again, obviously it will come down at some point. It's not going to stay at that rate forever, but that's where it currently is. And I think I'm just trying to give a lot of information just as backdrop to start the discussion. We're not looking for answers today. Again, it's just here's kind of where we are. Here's some of the challenges that again, it's not just us facing. I think when we all carpool back to Sacramento yesterday, the 4 general managers, and we as a 4 general manager having this whole conversation in the car the whole time. How do we have this conversation with our boards? How do we bring this forward? How do we move forward? So, and the legislators were asking a lot of these questions of, okay, well, how are you going to do this if you've got this $8 billion need, this hole in the operations budget? What does that mean? And Christy Wegner from LabTech, I think, just did a really good example. And I think it's telling. Right now we have in her example, they have 10 or 12 routes out there, serving however many service hours, and they're using diesel fleet vehicles. But they could quite easily have one ZEB route with 2 vehicles, but that would be all they could operate. That's the stark contrast of what we're kind of, how do we maintain this level of service, plus how do we go to clean technology? How do we do all of those things? So one of the things that I'm struggling a little bit with now is, we have the Lono grants, we have the local match to move forward with moving toward hydrogen, but right now we're not under contract for anything. We don't have any agreements in place. I have potential contracts that I was thinking of bringing to the board in the next few months to bring a project manager on board, to bring the first stage on board. But I'm starting to think that it's now time for us to just not put this to put this almost on hold, just to kind of step back and let's see where we are in 6 months before we enter into contracts, agreements, and think about where we are. Our next vehicle purchase will be 2 large MCI, potentially 2 large MCI vehicles. right now there's not a hydrogen vehicle out there. It doesn't exist. It's not even, I'm sure the manufacturers are thinking about it, but they're not even, you know, there's no engineering being done. It's not there. Then after that we have, I'm not sure if it's 35 or 40 foot vehicles, but you know, I mean, I think I'm starting to edge for, we may be coming to the board to ask about, well, okay, are hybrids an option to go forward with rather than, you know, diesel vehicles? But I do want to just reiterate, and next time, because I'm going to have a bit more time to prepare this, we're going to bring a presentation to kind of document a lot of this. But the renewable diesel that we use in our fleets, and we have done now for, I don't know, 8-9 years, has a cleaner carbon footprint than the electrical grid currently. So it's a renewable diesel. It's not biodiesel. It's completely renewable. It's not, I think it's 80 or 85% less emissions than diesel itself. So it's a clean diesel. So it's a really efficient use of fuel that we're kind of using right now. So I think we have some graphs that kind of can really show where it falls in the spectrum of kind of other carbon uses. So, you know, and the other not concern, but, you know, the other issue that comes up with hydrogen is, what is it green hydrogen, blue hydrogen, grey hydrogen? How is it produced? Because most of the hydrogen, honestly, is produced by fossil fuels. I mean, that's the reality of it. So this is something else that I believe it was Assemblymember Wicks brought up as a question yesterday. You know, we couldn't really answer this question, but given that the new federal administrative are potentially going away from this type of technology, this type of thing, how incentivized are the likes of Chevron going to be to go forward with this hydrogen? Because that's where the increase in technology, that's where the improvements are making because of their investment into this technology. If they lose their incentive to do so, where does that, you know, what does hydrogen, what happens with hydrogen? You know, okay, it doesn't go away, but does it kind of develop quick enough to be a viable option for a transit fleet like ours? So, I think that was most of the things I wanted to cover. I know it's a lot to kind of cover, but I just wanted to kind of broach it today. Happy to answer any questions. Happy to have individual one-on-one conversations to get into more depth, kind of offline. But I think the plan would be to come next month with a little bit more detail, actual presentation, just to document some of these and what it really means, and try and put some of the comparisons, and just start the board thinking about where do we want to go. You know, it's, again, reiterate, it's not a backing away from a commitment to zero emission vehicles. It's more just are we there? Are we in the right place right now? And I think the last thing I'll say on the technology, and again, we're not currently looking at electric vehicles, and one of the reasons is that the technology for them is, even though it's far more advanced, there's so many issues out there. I mean, I think every transit agency that has electric vehicles has at least part of that fleet that they cannot use, partly because the manufacturers that made them have gone out of business, completely out of business. I mean, I know Tridelta have got 2 vehicles that they haven't used for 18 months. There's no parts available, even if they could get them. They just don't exist, because the knock-on effect of the bus manufacturer going out of business is that the smaller industries that supplied the parts goes out of business, and so there's nothing available for them to kind of do. So there's that, and I think, you know, there's another agency where the charging system that they purchased, that company went out of business. The charging doesn't work anymore. They had to actually hire someone to retrofit back end to kind of get the whole system back working, and it was 2-3 months. So their whole fleet sat unused for that length of time. So there's just a lot of concern. I think now that we're really at where CARB have, you know, put the mandate, here's where you've got to start doing it. I think all the operators are kind of like just asking these questions, and I think it was actually really encouraging that yesterday that the legislative staff, they all had the same kind of questions. We weren't convincing them of our issues. They were aware of them. They were asking the same questions and saying, okay, well, what are the next steps with CARB? What can we do to kind of help alleviate some of these issues? So with that, happy to answer any questions and I'll take any comments.
So the earlier plan you had, like to keep getting diesels and push it out as far as possible, is kind of
That's
early on wasn't the best, because it looks like we're still, even with doing that, we're in front of the curve. It's not like we're going to meet into the, we're still, doesn't sound like hydrogen is going to be where it needs to be, and electric, you need 3 buses to run a route instead of, because they're sitting and
Definitely
charging.
for electric, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the real concern with electric. It's not a 1-for-1 replacement. It's at least 2 vehicles to do the same amount of service.
So if we did go hydrogen at this rate, it'd be, the fuel cost would be 3 times as much.
And the vehicle itself is
It'd be 3
Well,
times or twice as
at
much.
least double.
Yeah, okay. Any questions? Sure.
Yes. How many vehicles, diesel vehicles, do you purchase a year or?
So it's not a year, because the way we have purchased vehicles in the past, it's sort of over the life. A normal vehicle has 12-year life cycle. So, and we have various sub-fleets within our fleet. So the most vehicles we would purchase in a year, I think that our largest sub-fleet is 6. So it could be 6 1 year, and then nothing for 2 years, then 4 vehicles, then. So it's never more than 6. But our entire fleet is we have 36, 35, and 40-foot vehicles, and then 10 larger vehicles. So it's around 46 vehicles in total.
Okay, and how many do you have, like, are you anticipating having to replace in the next year?
So the board already approved. We have 3 large over-the-road coaches which are approved. The funding is the administration could not touch that funding. That funding is safe. So those buses will hopefully arrive in around May. Next year, we probably need to purchase 2 additional larger 45-foot vehicles. And then our next purchase is we pushed it out to 2028. So that would be, it's a total of 9 vehicles over a 2-year period.
And the 3 are the 3 that you mentioned, those are done deals already?
Yes.
So the other 6 are not yet?
Correct.
And is there do you look at, or has it been discussed before, buying smaller vehicles?
Well, I think
Is
it's
that a possibility or an option at all?
one of the difficulties is, a lot of it's based on ridership. So, at some point during the day, yes, there could be 2 or 3 people on the board. But if that bus happens to service a school and we need a larger vehicle, it's really difficult to change a vehicle out midday. This is not a no. This is a yes. We are looking at those kind of things. Right now we pretty much standard. Our local service is 35-foot vehicles. Our express service is 40-foot vehicles. There are options for a 29-foot vehicle. I mean that's kind of as small as you can get really for a standard transit vehicle. So there are those
29 versus what? What's
35.
35.
And then, as part of the study that we are, the comprehensive operation analysis, one of the options we're looking at is potentially microtransit, which is completely different set of vehicles. It's a smaller fleet entirely. That's just an option to be out there, but
Like van type
Yeah,
size?
yeah.
That's exactly what
Yeah,
I was wondering,
so-
if you were looking at that.
we are.
which
Yeah,
you
I mean, it's
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. So, yes, next time you have something for us to
to
look at and think about several things that you mentioned are sort of crisscrossing in my mind, and it's hard to think about them even just having heard them for the first time. One, there's a lot that I personally have to catch up on. It's also very tempting to go down what could be a rabbit hole and want to learn everything about hydrogen, want to learn everything about electric vehicles, which I won't do because there's so much to learn and things do change. But what I do, I would find helpful is even just now when you were asked about how many vehicles are needing to be replaced and the timing of those. So timeline of the fleet as you know it now in 2025, what needs to be replaced by when relative to that 2040. So what I'm picturing now is trying to understand the timelines that are in place, that are goals at this point. I'm glad to hear that the legislators are also thinking and wondering, indeed, how these goals are going to be met. As far as I'm concerned, a goal is wonderful, but the details about how to get there is what we are now faced with, right? And those details then require us to think about not only internal constraints, but as well as external circumstances. So another set of dates that I have in mind, in which we don't know a lot about, and things are changing every day, is given the current administration. So also in 4-year periods. Because, and I'm thinking now federal administration, because that has a lot to do with affecting what funding there is available for vehicles. And so if, however you lay out your presentation, could take into consideration context as we know it today, and anticipate could happen. I know there's a lot of uncertainty within 4 years. How does that mesh with that 2040 California goal? Is it just California?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And although we would like to be leaders, again, it gets to the practical aspect of an everyday writer doesn't have those goals. An everyday writer wants to get to their job or to their school or to their market. And I am hopeful, and I imagine that our legislators at the state level also consider that. There's a goal that we have out here as wanting to be leaders in transportation and aim to try to get to zero-emission vehicles. And then there's the practical, everyday life of our riders. And I don't want to ignore that. And I think that's what keeps us here to think through along with you, as well as to learn about how can we achieve a bit of meeting those practical considerations and the objectives of having a budget that meets what operation costs, as well as doing something for the greater environment, the larger environments, which is what those goals are about. So thank you for hearing me out. Those are some of the thoughts that occurred to me. A lot of crisscrossing, as well as some desirable, ambitious goals, and then the reality of life as we know it. Thank you.
I was just wondering, I don't know where we source our renewable diesel from, but I know that, for example, in Rodeo, that refinery, I don't know if it's converted completely yet. That's converting to renewable diesel. And then the Marathon refinery, the former Tosco refinery out in Pacheco, I guess that is, Concord. That's also, if it's not online yet, is converting to renewable diesel. How does that help us, or doesn't? I'm just curious, because I think it's cool that they're going to that technology, and I'm glad that you mentioned how that it's much cleaner than the previous diesel that we used to use.
I mean, our maintenance guy isn't here tonight, but we do actually go out into the market to purchase at the best price we can. So I mean, I think we're constantly trying to find the best price we can for what we purchase. I know it doesn't really answer your question, but I mean that's kind of I'm just not sure exactly where we get it from.
It would just be interesting to see if it's had a positive impact for us, or
sure.
will be in the future. I don't know, because I don't even know if those are fully online yet.
Yeah, I'm not sure, so we can look into that for sure.
Any other questions? All right. Some nice,
That was my
friendly
plug
new-
for clean diesel, by the way. I said that was my plug for clean diesel. I'm a fan.
I guess one question would be, so if we did go to look at hybrids, because that was discussed at one time, and the problem before was when you bought a hybrid, you also had to buy the second engine with it. So that kind of drove up the cost. I remember that was like 10 years ago, we were kind of looking at. So as a hybrid, does that give you even cleaner because it's less, and it's also quieter too, isn't it?
Yes,
So
I
like
mean,
in certain sensitive neighborhoods, you'd even get a quieter piece of equipment running through it.
Yeah, there's definitely technology. I mean, the technology's come a long way, and I think I don't recall those conversations, but that's not a concern now. I think you would be purchasing a vehicle that should last the full 12 years. You know, that shouldn't be a problem. But hybrid is definitely an option. It's something that I had a meeting with Gillig 2 weeks ago at this point, and that we were having that whole conversation about, well, if you don't go hydrogen, what would you consider hybrids? Because I think that's the other thing that, because Gillig are trying to plan out their future strategy of what they're going to, they've got their whole business model to worry about, to concern. So they were having a lot of questions about where do we go with hydrogen, and right now they're still going ahead with their plans, but they were originally thinking, okay, well, we're going to be losing a lot of diesel market, we're going to be losing some of the hybrid market, and so they're now just rethinking out that whole model of how they're going to kind of move forward in that field.
Gillig already has a hybrid.
Yes, they do, yes.
So it could be like a transitional vehicle.
Exactly, yeah. And I think that's how a lot of operators are starting to think that. Again, the conversations we had, I know Lavda want to buy diesel hydrogen vehicles, but they're not going to have the infrastructure, so rather than getting more diesel, the hybrid seems like the better option.
And like AC's kind of all the way in on hydrogen because they've put in the expense of a hydrogen station. And
But their next stage, they also have money under the Lono program that is, under the same kind of concerns that we have. So they're in a much better place. They have infrastructure in place. They can carry on with what they're doing. But in terms of the next stage, that's the question.
It's
All right.
12-year lifespan of some of the buses. We've gone beyond that though on some of the lines. I know
We've gone
in
a lot.
positive way. Like
We've gone a
had
long way.
Great
That's-
longevity.
With everything these days, 10 years ago, yes, a 12-year vehicle could easily last 14, 15 years. Now, it lasts 12 years. It's a lot harder to maintain. They're not built as robustly as with everything. The older equipment lasted longer. Well, we still do, and MCIs and the Alexander Dennis actually have a 16-year life cycle. And we do have vehicles we have MCIs that are now over 16 years, still out there in the field on the road. So,
are the first over the road still out there? The first links?
no, we're on 2008 now. So
Okay.
some of the first larger ones we purchased, but not the ones that because we had some
Yeah.
high floor. They were Gillig type vehicles, so they're no longer on the road. But
Right.
the first MCIs we bought, yes, we still got 2008. So
Yeah.
yes, they are.
Because they pulled up out front here one night.
Yeah, 201 still out there.
It's still on the road. All right, so that takes care of 6.3. 7.1, General Manager's Report.
So just two brief items today. We just went through our CHP inspection, which inspects the terminal, so it inspects the quality of the work that we're doing to maintain our vehicles, the paperwork that are maintained by MV, our contractor. Pleased to say that we again passed with no deficiencies. So that's I don't know how many years we've done that, but it's really good to come through that inspection because I know a lot of work goes in, especially on the MV side, to make sure paperwork's up to date and vehicles are maintained and we're going through the right process. So I want to shout out to Rami and to the MV team for the work to get us through that inspection. And then the only other item is again just referencing our comprehensive operations analysis, the WestCat evolution plan that we're doing. There are 2 open houses coming up. We do have a flyer that we will distribute to everyone so you can pass it along. We're also putting a direct mailer out to every resident within our service area to invite them to these 2 events. Be an event where our consultant will ask some of the same questions that she asked when she came to the board, kind of some of those comparison questions, looking at what we've done. We have completed the passenger survey, so we're starting to see some of the results from that. But if you want to put these, I'm happy to send these out separately, but put them on your calendar. The event at the Panola Library will be on Wednesday, March the 5th, between 6 and 8 p.m. And then the event at the Aloni Centre will be on the Saturday, March 8th, between 11 and 1. So as I say, there's a mailer going out to every resident within the entire service area, not just Hercules, but Rocket. We've covered the entire service area. So I believe that was finalised yesterday, so that should be going out in the next day or 2.
Could you send those out to the board too electronically so we can?
Certainly, yes.
All right. Any questions at General Manager's Report? No? Right, that brings us to the WICTAC report. So last WICTAC meeting, I guess the biggest thing that was on the agenda was the Richmond Parkway plan. So they were looking at what to do and what things could be done to help the Richmond Parkway make it a better and safer route. Going back to the beginning when it was built, it wasn't built to Caltrans standards. Everybody would like to send it to Caltrans, but they can't because Caltrans would accept it, and it's about $250 million to fix it. So they're trying to find ways to make it a better, safer route. So a consultant team came in and kind of worked out a plan for that so they can go forward and start getting grants and different things to try to make the parkway safer and better because there's so many housing down along the parkway now that they wanted to make it pedestrian safe and bike safe where it hasn't been in the past. So a lot of accidents down through the Richmond Parkway too. So that was a big topic, was the Richmond Parkway and what can be done to fix it. So that's the WICTAC report, and bring us to correspondence. No correspondence, nobody wrote us nothing. All right. Do we have any board communications or items for next board meeting? All right, shall we, did you like this?
I just want to thank our general manager for going up there to Sacramento and talking to our legislators and having those kinds of communications with them, and it's somewhat encouraging that the legislators are also somewhat challenged with trying to find solutions, and that's not just about enacting policy, but actually considering how that policy will be implemented, which eventually leads to operations. So, yeah, good.
All right, shall we adjourn? Thank you, everyone. See you next month. We will meet again here on March 13th. Oh, nice lucky day. Perfect.